When Iron Man 3 was first released in 2013, the fan reaction was more than a little divisive. What had been advertised as a dark, intense conclusion to Tony Stark's story ended up throwing fans for a loop, with an emphasis on humor and subverted expectations.
Don't hurt the face, I'm an actor.
But while it might have been controversial at the time, in the years since its release, Iron Man 3 has proven to be one of the more impressive entries in Marvel's cinematic universe. In fact, when you look at the trajectory of the films that followed, there's a solid argument to be made that Iron Man 3 changed the course of the MCU for the better. Don't believe us? Well, brace yourselves, people. We're about to prove why. Let's kick things off with a look at Iron Man 3's acclaimed writer and director Shane Black. This guy has the kind of fairy tale Hollywood story all aspiring screenwriters dream about, making it big early in his career and living large and in charge. He attended UCLA, majoring in film and theater, and managed to score an agent after he'd graduated. 20th Century Fox executives liked Black and were considering recruiting him as a kind of script doctor, rewriting and improving the stacks of unproduced screenplays at their studio. Black, however, had other plans. He wrote a little ditty called Lethal Weapon, which landed him a huge $250,000 deal with Warner Brothers. As a result of the film's success, Black ended up being one of Hollywood's top screenwriters. He went on to craft such hits as The Monster Squad, The Last Boy Scout, Last Action Hero, and The Long Kiss Goodnight. But it wasn't until 2005 that he migrated to the director's chair with his directorial debut Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. And who was the star of that film, you ask? Why, that would be none other than Mr. Robert Downey Jr. himself. Downey Jr. was on the upswing after the numerous controversies that had ruined his career and landed him in jail. But it was still a show of faith for Black to cast him in the lead role. Years later, this gesture paid off for Black in spades. Downey Jr. vouched for him to co-write and direct Iron Man 3 after Iron Man 1 and 2 director Jon Favreau opted to step aside from the role. Marvel Studios entrusting Black with their most popular character was huge, especially following the massive success of the first Avengers film. Anyone who has had the pleasure of seeing Black's most iconic works knows he has a unique voice and vision. While his sarcastic sense of humor and action-packed sensibilities wouldn't be out of place in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, scoring such a major role on Iron Man 3 was a huge deal. Not only would Iron Man 3 cap off the Iron Man trilogy, serving as a conclusion of sorts for Tony Stark's character arc, it would also be functioning as the first official follow-up to the Avengers. Marvel's decision to recruit Black was an intriguing left turn made even more impressive when you take a look back at the filmmakers involved with Phase 1. With the exception of the first Iron Man film, most of the MCU's Phase 1 entries played things safe with simple, straightforward origin stories for Captain America and Thor, and a soft reboot for the Incredible Hulk. The studio recruited amazing talents such as Joe Johnston, Louis Leterrier, and Kenneth Branagh to direct these films. But for the most part, these entries still feel handcuffed by Marvel Studios' storytelling parameters. Not much stands out from the pack when you look at it from a technical perspective either. For the most part, these films are by the numbers in terms of technique, and the storytelling is still a bit clunky. That's not to say they're bad or anything like that, it's just to say that they kind of start to blend together a bit. Joss Whedon's Avengers was the exception. It kicked the MCU game up to a whole new level of awesomeness. Not only is it a fantastic film, it also ended up being the first MCU film since the first Iron Man to feel like the singular vision of a great filmmaker, serving as a genuine showcase of its director's unique creative sensibilities. But even Avengers played its part, not stepping too far outside its pre-established role as the epic team-up film fans had been craving since day one. The real question on everyone's minds regarding Iron Man 3 wasn't how Black was going to follow up Iron Man 2, it was how he was going to follow up the Avengers. Early on, Shane Black and his co-writer Drew Pearce opted for a more personal story that would serve to scale things down after the events depicted in Avengers, a trend Marvel would follow in the future. Ant-Man followed the gargantuan bombast of Avengers Age of Ultron, and the character once again helped cool things down following the massive events of Infinity War with Ant-Man and the Wasp. Originally, Black wanted to get really personal with Stark. He intended to focus on the iconic Demon in a Bottle storyline from the Iron Man comics, which focused on Tony Stark's near-debilitating struggles with alcoholism. Obviously, they didn't go in this direction. When asked why they shied away from this material during a fan interview, Black stated, "I think we were just told by the studio that we should probably paint Tony Stark as being kind of an industrialist and a crazy guy, or even a bad guy at some points, but the demon in a bottle stuff of him being an alcoholic wouldn't really fly. I don't blame that." With Demon in a Bottle being out of the running, Black and Pierce honed in on Stark's borderline PTSD and panic attacks following the Avengers' spectacular throwdown in New York City. This gave them the intensely personal storyline they were looking for, and Black quickly imbued the film with many of his standard trademarks. It takes place at Christmas, it contains his unique snarky sense of humor and quippy punchlines.
Honestly, I hate working here. They are so weird.
It's got a mystery angle with Stark serving as something of a detective, another familiar trait in Black's filmography. Plus, you've even got a fun, sweet relationship with a precocious little kid that feels so in tune with the filmmaker's sensibilities.
Remember when I said to stop doing that? I'm swear to you're gonna freak me out.
Where's the solo MCU movie for this kid? Come on, Marvel, get your act together. All the ingredients were in place to ensure Iron Man 3 functioned not only as a successful sequel to its predecessors, but as a showcase for Black's talents. It's one of the first films released by Marvel Studios to feel truly cut from its own cloth. The film is less concerned with serving as an assembly line product in an ongoing enterprise than it is with serving as a creative statement with a unique vision. Nowhere is this more evident than in Black's decision to put the emphasis on the comedy portion of the action comedy genre.
You know what keeps going through my head? Where's my sandwich?
Iron Man 3 is fast-paced, rollicking, and fun, sometimes at the expense of genuine stakes or suspense. This is a criticism that's been lobbied at the MCU time and time again, but it was Black's decision to pull a fast one on Marvel fans the world over that really irked some people. That's right, we're referring to the infamous Mandarin twist heard round the world.
I am the Mandarin!
The Mandarin is one of Iron Man's most iconic villains. As portrayed in the comics, he's actually considered to be Tony Stark's arch-nemesis. A Chinese native, the Mandarin is something of a super genius and possesses some pretty insane hand-to-hand combat skills. However, his most iconic features are his 10 power rings, which were developed using alien technology. These 10 rings, worn on each of the Mandarin's 10 fingers, possess different powers like ice, lightning, and even mind control. Pretty fancy stuff, right? Sure, it's a little reminiscent of Captain Planet, but that's not a bad thing. Besides, the Mandarin preceded Captain Planet, so technically Captain Planet is the one doing the ripping off here. Also, you're welcome for fitting a Captain Planet reference into this video. Fans had been clamoring for the Mandarin's appearance in the Marvel Cinematic Universe since the start of the franchise. Even director Jon Favreau threw his vote into the mix back in 2010 during the release of Iron Man 2. He stated he had every intention of doing the Mandarin for the third Iron Man film. It's no wonder fans were looking forward to seeing the Mandarin unleashed in all his big screen glory. The potential for the battles between him and Iron Man was off the charts, sure to be a special effects extravaganza that would inspire the masses. When it was announced Ben Kingsley would be playing the character, some fans scoffed that the filmmakers were diverging from the Mandarin's Chinese background. But many other fans were excited the Oscar-winning actor was joining the MCU ranks and looked forward to what he'd bring to the table. Marvel Studios' marketing team played an interesting game when promoting Iron Man 3, pushing it as a dark and tragic conclusion to the Iron Man trilogy. Remember that first Iron Man 3 trailer and how intense it was? That final shot of Tony Stark dragging his Iron Man suit through the snow framed his journey as one both harrowing and despairing. Kingsley's deliberate speech patterns and affectations were designed to emphasize the threat the Mandarin posed for Stark. By all accounts, it looked like the MCU was going darker than ever before. Only Shane Black had different plans. Instead of the Mandarin, we got something else. And yeah, something else is probably a bit of an understatement. It's funny to look back on this trailer now, considering what we ended up with was far more humorous in nature than the trailers let on. The film's big twist revealed the Mandarin was nothing more than a ruse.
My name's Trevor Slattery.
And the rug was pulled out from under Marvel fans' feet. But here's the thing. We'd argue this was a really smart move on Marvel's part. One that has paid off in many ways since the film's release. What this twist showed was that Marvel Studios wasn't afraid to take creative risks with their major properties. They'd followed up the biggest successes they'd had up to this point with one of their most knowingly divisive entries yet. That's a pretty bold artistic move for a giant corporation to make. Even if you didn't like it, you kinda have to give them props for taking a chance like this. This opened the floodgates for so many other filmmakers to lend their creative visions to Marvel's cinematic universe. Without Iron Man 3, it's likely audiences would have been less prepared for something as subversive and quirky as James Gunn's Guardians of the Galaxy or Taika Waititi's Thor Ragnarok. It's possible Ryan Coogler wouldn't have gotten to make a film as personal as Black Panther if the studio had been opposed to Shane Black's unique storytelling techniques. Iron Man 3 showed the world that Marvel was more interested in creativity and storytelling than it was with playing things safe and churning out products with no differentiating features. Sure, we still get those kinds of movies every once in a while, but more often than not, Marvel is willing to take the creative risk and offer fans something a little more outside the standard superhero box. The decision to let Shane Black have significant creative influence on Iron Man 3's storytelling direction paid off. To this day, Iron Man 3 is the highest-grossing Marvel movie without Avengers or Black Panther in its title. Its final worldwide gross tally ended up being $1.2 billion. Not too shabby, right? But one of the most important lessons learned from Iron Man 3's release wasn't just the fact that it subverted expectations and offered something more out there and bizarre. It was the way it honed in on Tony Stark's character, giving him the spotlight to shine. It's no mistake that Stark spends the majority of the film outside the Iron Man suit. Black was more interested in digging into the character than he was with robots and explosions. Though to be fair, Iron Man 3 gives plenty of time to shine to those robots and explosions too. In Iron Man 3, Tony Stark's character arc is seen through to a satisfying conclusion. He started off as snarky and selfish, having only his best interests in mind. By the time Iron Man 3 rolled around, he'd embraced his role as a responsible human being, opting to use his incredible abilities to serve mankind instead of himself. Now, this isn't to say that Iron Man 3 marks the end of Stark's journey. He pops up in Age of Ultron and Captain America Civil War and even in Spider-Man Homecoming as a mentor figure to Peter Parker. But in all of these appearances, his behavior and decisions are guided by the journey he takes in Iron Man 3. Sure, he screws up along the way. Age of Ultron, anyone? But his intentions are genuine, noble even. That's a far cry from where he started. This is all to say that while Iron Man 3 might not be the best entry in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, we're looking at you, Winter Soldier, it's still one of the most important. In the years since its release, many fans who were less enamored with it at the time have been won over by its charming nature. Some fans have even gone so far as to declare it as their personal favorite. In April of 2018, James Hunt composed an extensive article for Den of Geek detailing why he believed it to be the best film the MCU had to offer. It's definitely worth checking out. You know, if you're into that whole reading thing. Iron Man 3 isn't without its flaws, but it has enough rip-roaring action and humor to rise above its shortcomings. To this day, it stands as one of the most impressive films in the MCU and a valuable lesson on why it's important for studios to let their filmmakers shine. And that's that, true believers. We've said our piece, now we want to hear from you. Do you think Iron Man 3 is a pivotal entry in the Marvel Cinematic Universe? Or are you still ticked off about that Mandarin twist? Beyond that, do you think the film is a satisfying conclusion to Tony Stark's character arc started in Iron Man 1? Let us know in the comments below. And come on, you know you want to click that subscribe button too. We've got plenty of great content here on Screen Rant, and it's coming at you so fast you don't want to miss a thing.